You know, guys, it feels like a lifetime ago. It does feel like a lifetime ago that I was sitting here talking to you guys, singing the praises of Terminal List Dark Wolf just after the premiere of the first 3 episodes. If you don't know what it is, it's about Ben Edwards. It is a prequel series from the 2022 Chris Pratt Terminal List, which was really, really good. And if I have to say so myself, without giving away any spoilers or getting you to click off the video, this is one of those rare instances where the prequel series has turned out to be, in my personal opinion, better than the original series itself. If you want to know my thoughts on the first couple of episodes, I did make a video about it. It's right here on the channel. I give a breakdown of like the backdrop of the show, what's going on, what I believe the characters' motivations are. I think it was the first 2 episodes. Anyways, this is a show starring Taylor Kitsch as Ben Edwards. It's got Robert Wisdom as Jed Haverford, which I was very, very excited about. There's other great actors in this series, but those are your main stars that I think a lot of you would remember. There's other actors in here. Tom Hopper plays Rafe. We've got Dar Salim, who I think is probably the standout actor, at least if you ask me, the standout performer as Mo in this series. I think he was in, if I remember correctly, and I did see the movie, he was in The Covenant, the Guy Ritchie movie, which I really, really enjoyed. And I said during that review that it was that he was the standout so far. I think that continues, but he probably could have gotten more screen time. I do want to say that I am happy to inform you that this show absolutely sticks the landing. I'm going to give some details. There might be some spoilers here. I wanted to give reviews for each of the episodes of this series as it was airing, but it's weird how life happens. I happened to be going out of town because I was getting married and then going on my honeymoon. So I was actually watching this series weekly on my, the week leading up to my wedding, and then on my honeymoon, I would try to get some time away, at least for an hour, to watch the new episodes as they came out. But I did watch the season finale last night. It was only 7 episodes, this series was, which is actually a bummer. One of the problems we have with TV these days is it doesn't feel like you actually get a lot of time to sit with these characters. Now, granted, a show like this, which is basically, the slur they use for it is dad TV, which is a way to denigrate the interests of actual men, shows about the military, shows about law enforcement, things like that. It gets labeled as dad TV. It's a slur. Don't let anybody tell you differently. It absolutely is. But it's prestige TV because it's large in scale, minimal episodes. It's serialized rather than episodic. And it's not very often that a series that is based on another series, a prequel, ends up being better than the original. I do think that this one is superior to the 2022 Chris Pratt series, The Terminal List, and it's less episodes. And I would have loved another episode for this series, but it can't also be understated that it's not always a bad thing to not wear out your welcome and just, fill out the runtime, which is oftentimes an issue. It's like they do these mini series that are 8 episodes long, but each episode is like an hour and a half. No, they kept these episodes to about an hour. I give you a basic breakdown of the plot, which is that, again, if you are currently watching and haven't finished the series, you may want to click this off. But at the end of episode 7, we find out that the character of Jed Haverford has betrayed them. He's actually selling bearings to Iran. And that's a problem because the team realizes they've been had, and then you see Ben, Mo, and the team just absolutely obliterate this plane of Iranian officials who have just done this weapons deal that they didn't even realize that they were a part of. And then from there, to save himself, Jed puts all the blame on Ben and his team, and he has to go on the run. And then to try to bring Jed out of hiding, he comes up with a ploy with Verone, who is this woman who works at Mossad, who is part of his team that realizes they've all been betrayed. He then, to keep a line open for about 15 minutes, he has to defend his cabin. Basically, he's Kevin McAllister from Home Alone with like heavy weaponry and bombs, and it's freaking awesome. One of the things the show did really, really well for most of its run is that it used a setup, which was basically they have decent dialogue and build up leading into a strong action sequence at the end of every episode, which sort of slingshots you into the next episode. And for once in television, makes you wonder, like, yo, I want the next episode now. I don't want to wait till next week. Like, one of the things I miss is when they would drop these series all episodes at once, because I don't want to wait a week to watch it. I want to be able to binge it. So I almost wish I had saved and watched all of these episodes at once, because every week at the end of the episode, they'd have this incredible action scene. And then I'd be like, I need more. I want more. And this episode is a little bit different. You get a lot of the action in the beginning because they use the action that's done at the beginning as the payoff to show you what happens to all the characters, both on Ben's team and then those part of the conspiracy with the character of Jed. And I think that that works well for this episode. It's good that it was the last episode, because if this was in the middle, I feel like it would have been jarring that it kind of broke from the formula that they were using in there. It does do a good job. Again, if you've already seen it, you know what I'm talking about. It does do a good job knowing that it's the finale, and it wants to tie up the loose ends that have kind of been, that have arisen throughout this show. The character of Ben is able to give a final gift to Eliza's daughter, who did pass away before, she was killed earlier in the series. And then you get to see the characters of Landry and Mo take out members of the conspiracy on the other side with like a slit throat and then a car bomb. It's brutal, but it's exactly what it's supposed to be given the subject matter. And then you get to the scene with Jed and Ben, and they have their face to face. And I guess I assume, just given the brutal nature of the show, again, I know that this is based on the Terminalist book from Jack Carr. I don't know if there is a prequel novel of any sort. I don't know if this was all original material or if they were drawing inspiration from somewhere. But Ben and Jed have their talk about their motivations now that Jed has finally been cornered. He spent this whole series kind of leading everybody astray. They thought he was part of their team, and he ended up betraying them. And you get to understand why he was willing to sell Ben out and actually sell nuclear material to Iran. And he goes off about, it goes all the way back to Vietnam. It goes back to his time in Lebanon and the cost of American inaction in the Middle East, allowing terrorism to rise and become more prominent, which he, of course, being somebody who has just retired, spent his whole career working as this kind of CIA counterterrorism asset. You understand what his motivations are, and they do a good job of not telling you that his actions are okay, but explaining why it would be possible that a character like this, who worked his whole career in this field, would be jaded and end up going the way that he did. And I believe that it makes the character more understandable. It's not the way we see villains being kind of redeemed these days, which is the act of saying, in a lot of ways, it feels like on television, they want to excuse the acts of evil people. A lot of times, I think people like me would kind of wonder if it's because the writers don't necessarily have the strongest moral compass, and it's not necessarily for writing's sake, but it's almost as if they don't understand the pull that the idea of good and evil has on the average everyday person. And when you muddy it with shades of gray, it oftentimes can ruin the storytelling. It does not do that in this series. Jed also is able to turn it back around on Ben, and I think he correctly diagnoses Ben's cavalier attitude to the ways in which he goes after his goals and achieving what he wants. He does bring up the extrajudicial assassination that Ben commits at the start of the show, which puts a lot of this show into, it gets the show moving. That action that he does when he murders this man is the impetus for a lot of what goes on later, despite the fact that the show does a good job of showing you what a bad person he was. It was still, in the fog of war, not the correct action from Ben, which gives him layers and doesn't exactly make him the cleanest hero you've ever heard, but next to the character of Jed, you understand where his motivations were. And then from there, he's approached on his boat. Now, after this, you think that what's going to happen is that Ben is going to do what Mo has done. Ben is going to do what Landry has done and kill Jed. He does not do that. It basically says, you're going to jail. Here's the evidence. Here's the intel I got from Mossad. You're going to jail, and there's nothing you can do about it. And the thing you care about most in the world, your legacy, will be tarnished forever. If you want to be more flowery with your thoughts about what that means, you could say that maybe for somebody like Jed, who cares so much about his legacy, the destruction of it is a fate worse than death or a fate worse than jail. I don't know if it's necessarily that deep, but it's definitely something that you could at least consider. And then they shoot this scene where he's approached on the boat. Again, this is the boat. If I remember correctly, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but that's how the Terminalist ended, was, in the hull of a boat. And I'm assuming it's the same one here, which is their way of calling back to it, which works. Again, I think that prequels get in the weeds about callbacks and trying to be like, hey, remember this thing from this previous series? Remember this thing from this series you've seen that took place in the future? Well, here's how we got here. Here's why this happens. You don't always need to do that, especially a show like this, which I believe was strong enough on its own that I do believe it's the superior series, that it doesn't need those callbacks because the material itself stands on its own. And look, if I had critiques of the show, you know, I think that Taylor Kitsch does great work in the show, but I guess I can imagine there's actors that may have brought a bit more charisma to it, but I think there's a grit to his character that works very, very well. I think that the show does a good job of showing the camaraderie between him and the members of his SEAL team, which do come back eventually to save him in this. You get your obligatory Chris Pratt cameo, given that he's a producer on the series, and of course, he was the star of the series that it's based on. If I had one critique for most of it, it's probably something that I mentioned in the original video. The flat cinematography. Look, the original show had a very, very flat monochrome look to it. It wasn't black and white, but it's tinged and bathed in gray and blue, and it worked for the series. Given the subject matter of what happens to Reese's family, it's dark, it's depressing, and it's infuriating, so that tonality in its color scheme makes perfect sense. This show isn't hampered by that same thing. This show is not hampered by the same level of darkness that the original show was. In fact, in a lot of ways, what it's about is the character of Ben embracing the darkness that leads him to working for the CIA, which then eventually leads to him being the antagonist in the Terminal List. So it would have worked better to have a more deeper orange, better color palette. I would have loved lighter tones to everything. I'm not talking like you need to blow everything out the way they do the landscape shots in something like Star Wars these days, but a little bit more vibrance would have gone a long way in making some of these scenes look more interesting, especially when they're outside, which is when these types of shots are at its worst. It's almost like they don't want to color grade. They don't want to give the shots a specific look, so they just bathe it in blue and gray. And I'm like, look, that worked for the original series. I don't think it works here. Also, get away from the I don't care how much money it costs you. Get away from the drone shots. You can do it for the landscapes. You want to do drone shots of landscapes of cities and stuff like that. But if we're doing things of like vehicles on the road, it's like a combination of drone shots and purely CGI. Like you look at it, you're like, that is not a real vehicle on a real road, not in the slightest. You understand it. And the thing about drone shots when they're filming them is it slows the pace down. And for a show that did a great job of pacing everything, you know, spend the money and get a helicopter to really get some sweeping visuals in each of these cityscapes, especially if you're filming things like military convoys, stuff like that. It's funny. I made like a whole thing like a long time ago. I don't think it was on here, about like you watch a movie trailer, like you go back and you watch like the Black Widow movie trailer, and it was like the same time when they did like Independence Day Resurgence. The very first shot you see is like a convoy of like 8 UN vehicles, and as bad as that movie was, you know, it makes me miss the old days when they actually took helicopters out and shot stuff to give it movement. And those are very, very tiny nitpicks. I am sure you understand. So look, the story is great. It's far superior to the original. All of the actors turn in great performances. I think the character of Mo is probably the standout. I wish he would have gotten a little bit more time in this finale, but 7 episodes. Each episode does not overstay its welcome. The story is simple, to the point. You understand it. If you like dad TV, again, remember, that's a slur. Don't let anybody call it that. If you like shows like this, if you like The Terminal List, if you liked Reacher, any of that stuff, if you like Jack Ryan, I think that this is superior to many of them. It's definitely superior to season 2 of Reacher, probably not to season 1. I think it's worth checking out. You should go to Amazon Prime, check it out for yourself. Let me know what you thought of it. If you stayed for this whole review, I appreciate it, because like I said, I would have loved to have reviewed the other episodes in this series, but life gets in the way. You can't always get a chance to do that, but I want to speak its praises now. So let me know down below what you think of it. Did you watch the Terminal List sequel, Dark Wolf? And if you enjoyed it more than the original, let me know down below. Or if you preferred the original, let me know down below, because it would be interesting to see what prequels do you think actually surpass They're originals. I'd be interested to know. If you don't know what this podcast is, guys, Pop Culture Crisis is live Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You should come hang out with us. See you there, guys. Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.